is real. It comes without warning, and it cannot be escaped. Though teachings on death and dying are no longer common in the West, they remain a part of daily life in the Buddhist cultures of the Himalayas. The kingdom of Ladakh, once considered Western Tibet, is now administered by the Indian government. It is located 3,700 meters above sea level on the borders of China and Pakistan. Because it lies in a politically sensitive area, foreigners were forbidden to visit there until 1974. As a result, the culture of Ladakh is still relatively unchanged. Every New Year's, the people of Leh, the principal city of Ladakh, make a pilgrimage in which they offer prostrations, an ancient Buddhist practice. By making prostrations to the Buddha, his teachings, and the community of his followers, they pray that all who suffer in this world may find refuge in abiding peace. According to the Buddhist teachings, Buddhahood, or unchanging wakefulness, is at the heart of every living being. This basic awareness is the essence of life. It is beyond birth and death, but to be born leads inevitably to the sufferings of sickness, old age, and death. Compassion for everything that lives is the basis of a path through this life and to our death. The belief in reincarnation is an expression of that compassion. Buddhism was brought to Tibet in the Himalayas 1,300 years ago by the great Indian saint Padmasambhava. It was he who wrote the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is a guide for the dying. It describes the process of dying as a natural transition. The text explains how, by recognizing the mental states and physical sufferings involved, we can come into contact with our own essential nature. In this way, it is possible to find freedom from confusion and fear. In a small village near the headwaters of the Indus River, an old man, Paltan Sering, has died. The women of the family have gathered in the kitchen where they improvise laments to his memory. Whenever he would smile at me, I was never so happy. Now that he's gone, I have never been so miserable. The family has requested Chozan, a Nakpa, or Buddhist yogi, and a resident of the village who often performs these rites, to come and read the text and to make the appropriate offerings. When someone dies, the Bardo Tödol, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, is read every day for 49 days. According to this text, the consciousness of the dead person lingers between one life and another for a period of 49 days. During that time, he is capable of hearing, so the text is read aloud to encourage and guide him. At first, the text is read in the presence of the body. Kept carefully wrapped, this text, like most traditional Tibetan books, consists of unbound pages held between two boards and has been printed from hand-carved wood blocks. O son of noble family, that which is called death has now arrived. Now, for the benefit of all beings, recognize the luminosity which dawns before you. This great blazing mass of light is enlightenment itself. It is the natural mind. It is the essence of your own mind. Recognition and liberation are simultaneous. The Book of the Dead describes how at death the consciousness is suddenly separated from all the circumstances which made up daily life. Mind experiences its own liberation directly as radiant, pure white light. Both life and death, according to the Bardo Tödol, are a continuous flow of uncertain transitions called bardos. In the bardos of death, if mind does not recognize its own nature, it becomes ever more solid until it enters a new form of life. O son of noble family, now is the time for you to seek a path. You are not alone in leaving this world. Everyone who has come before you has died. You can no longer stay here. Now you should think like this. Now I will abandon clinging to this body and to this world. I will go forward. I will abandon fear and terror. And I will recognize whatever appears as a projection of my own mind. Chozan uses an old astrological calendar to fix the day of Palden Sering's cremation, making calculations based on the dates of the dead man's birth and death. He determines that the cremation should take place 10 days later. It shows here that Palden Sering may have been a wild pig in his past life, and that he may be a bird in his next one. But perhaps if he takes the Bardo Tödol to heart, he will return to the human realm. At the beginning of this century, W.Y. Evans Wentz, an American who studied anthropology at Oxford, became interested in reincarnation. He traveled to India, where he found a copy of the Bardo Tödol and sponsored the translation from Tibetan and edited the text into English. It was he who titled it the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The renowned Swiss psychologist Carl Jung wrote that he had found in this book his life's partner who had revealed the secrets of the soul. The Living Dying Project in San Francisco has been assisting terminally ill patients for more than 20 years. The project's aim is to help dying people find meaning in the transition between life and death.
The project was created because the metaphors, the storyline that existed in our culture for dying, in which death was seen as a failure and the enemy and an error of the universe somehow, and therefore the hospital intensive care ward was the ultimate inner chamber of the temple about life. And the whole fear that surrounded the process of doctors seeing death as a failure, for example, we felt there was the need for another metaphorical system.
So please begin by picturing in front of you your client or some other person you know who is suffering right now. And indirect way how this person actually is suffering. Feel the quality of it.
The Dying Project was created in order to create an environment in which people that were deep in philosophical materialism could explore another metaphor for life and thus for death. And the people we found most willing to do that were people that were themselves facing death.
What do you think is going to happen when you die?
This hospice serves people who are expected to die within 6 months.
Most people don't talk about death, you know.
Would you like to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. You want to tell me what you know?
Well, you know, I would, and I obviously haven't died myself lately.
No.
But let me give you what I know, and maybe it'll be useful. Consciousness leaves the body, and consciousness experiences a feeling of integrity and wholeness and safeness, and then it's attracted toward what is universally described as a very beautiful, incredibly beautiful, clear, bright light. It's never described as a beautiful sound or beautiful smell, but this very beautiful light. The reason this light is so beautiful is that this light is your true nature.
That would be very nice. That's fascinating. So you've actually been there with people, and they've come back and told you?
From near-death experiences, and there are people in certain traditions, like for instance in Tibetan Buddhism, who are trained to go into that after-death state with people and guide them. There are actual guidebooks to help people go through this journey, if you will.
Tokeden Rinpoche is an abbot from the monastery at Ladakh. He is making this visit in order to bless the people of the village, to teach, and to see how they are faring. Tokeden Rinpoche is also giving teachings on Poa. This is a method unique to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition for assisting the consciousness to release its attachment to the physical body at the time of death. This is Stanjin. He is 96 years old and has lived according to the Buddhist path for all his adult life. He has a deep interest in these teachings. First, visualize the form of the Buddha of boundless light, Amateus, above your head. Let your consciousness rise upward through your abdomen, upward through your body, up through your neck, and finally out the top of your head. Dissolve there into the light around you. In this way, you may enter directly the pure realm of light. The uncertainties of the Bardo will not affect you. While in the village, Tokeden Rinpoche also goes to do the Poa ceremony for Palden Tsering. He makes offerings of barley and butter and anoints Palden Tsering's head. Halden Sering, you have died. The light of this world is fading completely. And the light of the next world has not yet appeared. Your body has lost all feeling. This is what death is. Let yourself go. With more offerings of barley and butter, he invokes the blessings of all the Buddhas and all the awakened ones. The blood on the head gives an indication that the ceremony has gone well. If there is some sign that the dead man's consciousness has left the body from a place on the head, then that's a good thing. It means that the consciousness has not been obstructed as it left the body completely. Offerings are left out to encourage Halden Sering. Be nourished by our offerings, Halden Sering.
Sunchantam Jetitun Sunchantam Jetitun Rama Lashka Sunja Sangena Chotangal Yindun Sangi Jumban Della Chapter Sangi Shakta Tuval Angrimbo Tenanga.
Every day Stangen offers 100 prostrations with these words. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. By praying in this way, Stangen invokes the wisdom of the Buddha, his teachings, and the community of his followers to help all beings find liberation from suffering. He feels he has accomplished all that he can in this lifetime. He has lived to see his family secure and well, and his last wish now is to die soon.
숨찬담 이제 누워줄 거다. 누워줄 거다.
Are you afraid of death? No, everyone must die someday. Everyone is born with the weight of death on their shoulders. I haven't done anything bad, so I'm not afraid to die. What happens after death? Above are human beings. Below is hell. It's our destiny to die. Why aren't you afraid? Because we'll be reborn. This child is the reincarnation of someone. Everyone is reincarnated. What was this child's previous life? That I don't know. Even though the physical body dies, consciousness continues. It is a constant repetition of life and death. That's why people are reborn. Stangen was born at the end of the last century. It was all he could do just to survive the harsh winters. As a child, he had no blanket, so he slept covered in loose chicken feathers. For food, he caught wild birds and animals in the mountain. The only money in his village came from the sale of handicrafts to the caravans which traveled to China. Some of my life was very hard, but I have always practiced the Buddha's teachings. When I say the mantra with this prayer wheel, it is to express my wish that all beings in the lower realms, the animals and hungry ghosts, beings in hell, all find liberation. No matter what happens now, for myself, I have no regrets.
One of the things they wanted me to do today, and let me ask you if this is something that seems appropriate to you, was to read a little bit of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which traditionally is read to people so they can become familiar with these ideas.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'll read it one day.
Listen to what I am saying, Bruce. Death is now come and you are departing from this world. But you are not the only one, as death comes to all people on earth. Be willing to release any connections with the life you have been living, and release the people with whom you have associated. Whatever fear or terror that might come to you during the experiencing of the reality of your mind, keep these thoughts in your consciousness and go forward. Recognize that any mental image, pictures which occur are of your own creation. Maintain that recognition and you will achieve liberation.
"9 days have passed since Palden Sering's death. According to the Bardo Tödol, if the deceased has still failed to recognize his own basic nature, and if he has failed to recognize the peaceful deities as projections of his own mind, then they transform into terrifying, wrathful ones. Palden Sering listened without distraction. Now, the blood-drinking, wrathful ones will appear. Their bodies are dark red or dark blue, with 3 heads, 6 arms, and 4 legs spread wide apart. Their 9 eyes gaze into yours with a furious expression. They hold human skulls full of blood, and they roar like thunder. They are accompanied by a retinue of their own kind in many colors, and they fill the whole of space. Do not be afraid. Do not be confused. Recognize them as the projections of your own mind. Do not be afraid, for they are your innate wakefulness. If you recognize this, you will be liberated. Recognition and liberation are simultaneous. Today is the day of Palden Sering's cremation. Monks have been chanting in the house with the body since early morning. Cremations in Ladakh are performed as fire offerings. In order that he may no longer cling to his former body, and so that his relatives and loved ones may release him from the bonds of their attachment to him, his body is offered to the fire. The substances that are offered with the body, butter, oil, sugar, and various grains, represent everything that is desirable, sustaining, and virtuous in this world. To complete this process, Palden Sering's possessions were donated to the monastery. The day after the cremation, the monks auctioned them off to the people of the village. 2 days later, Palden Sering's sons carry his ashes up the mountain and leave them to the elements. Sering, listen without distraction. The body which you had in this life is becoming indistinct to you, and the body you will have in your future life is becoming clear. As you sense this, you will become frightened and sad. There is no place for you to rest, and no stopping place in your ceaseless wandering. You do not care what your next life will bring as long as you will be born soon, and so you approach anything that appears before you. Take care, Palden Sering. Do not be afraid. Look for a good human birth, where you may yet recognize your own true nature. The 14th Dalai Lama now resides here in Dharamsala, India. He was born in 1935 and was recognized 5 years later as the incarnation of the previous Dalai Lama. As a young boy, he could recognize people who were familiar to his predecessor and select objects which he had used. After his formal recognition, he was rigorously trained and assumed full spiritual and temporal authority as leader of the Tibetan state in 1950 at the age of 15.
If you accept, if you believe, if you accept, you see, life, continuation of life, then death is just, you see, one occasion. Like, you see, they're changing when your clothes become, let's say, old, and then, you see, the old cloth, you see, throw away and take, you see, new, nice, you see, cloth. Similarly, this old body cannot function properly, then change the new body, more energetic, more fresh body.
Sokrapa was shot by an Indian policeman 11 years ago while participating in a demonstration for the improvement of labor conditions in Ladakh. 2,000 people from all over the country attended his funeral. Subsequently, the Indian government acceded to the demand for improved conditions, and Sokrapa became a national hero. We have confirmed that this boy is the reincarnation of the monk Sokrapa. All Ladakh is very happy. Sokrapa's incarnation, Zopa, is the youngest son of a poor farming family and was discovered in Sokrapa's own village. When he was born, he had a bruise on his side which did not go away for a very long time. He said that he had been hit by a bullet and it hurt him. The bruise was on the same place where Sokrapa was shot. When Zopa was 2 years old, he said he wanted to meet his aunt. But the aunt he was referring to was Sokrapa's aunt, who had raised Sokrapa as a child and had lived with him. When he visited her, Zopa was able to identify all the objects which Sokrapa had regularly used. My nephew Sokrapa was a pure-hearted, virtuous person who always thought about other people. Because he was a good man, he has found a good rebirth. When Zopa was 8 years old, the village gathered funds to send him to be trained at Sera Monastery in Mysore, India. Sera, formerly a major monastery in Tibet, gives special attention to the traditions of debate, logic, and chanting Buddhist texts. The people of Ladakh hope that Zopa will one day return to his country as a future leader. On the final day of reading the Bardo Tödol, the entire family gathers to pray that Palden Tsering will find a fortunate birth. Palden Tsering, listen without distraction. You have not recognized your own nature, and now you will once again experience all the painful uncertainties of birth and death. Give up anger, give up attachment, and give up yearning for relatives and friends. Take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. With your head held high, enter the human realm.
I am
very happy that we have been able to offer all these prayers and this reading to help my father. We have done all that can be done for Palden Tsering. And all the ceremonies and readings have been done properly. I feel that Palden Tsering has found a human birth. But I don't know in what circumstances he may have been born. The Tibetan Book of the Dead presents the states of dying and after death as a continuous possibility. We can become frozen in our attachment and fear, or we can recognize the liberation of our true nature. The Tibetan Book of the Dead shows that this opportunity is available to us in every moment of life and death.
The heavy body of flesh and blood and bones has within it this body of consciousness, this body of light. Becoming this body of light so that you can just dissolve into this sense of light. The solid body remains here, but you are becoming this pure light, dissolving into your heart, dissolving into your heart with each breath. Each time you breathe out, it's as if it were your last breath. Expanding into a larger and larger sense of spaciousness. Nothing to hold on to. Beyond the mind, beyond the body, floating free in space, totally safe. Any distraction dissolving back into the heart. Floating free.
Nice.
Nice?
Like, you know, any tapes of you talking like this together?
I don't have any tapes.
Oh,
No.
I'd love to play it a few times.
Something which difficult to handle. Now that, if you prepare that, you know it. Now, such is the time. I will face the terrible situation, and knowing it, and prepare for it. Then when actually you see that happen, you already you see accepted, you already you see prepare for it. So much easier to handle.
And I accept that actually. And it's not like it's an awful thing. You see, and if you can get to that point, you face death a lot, because it's just another thing along the way. And
sometimes I also, you see, have some kind of excited feeling towards death. Now, because you see, in my daily prayer, they deal with, you see, the death process and the Bardo process and next life. So therefore, when I sometimes think about death, then I got some kind of excitement. Whether really I can utilize these practice fully at that moment or no.
Stangen's great-granddaughter, who was married into a family in a distant village, comes to visit him. Grandpa, how are you? Here's my son. The child is Stangen's great-great-grandchild. Stangen is very happy to have his family with him. Although he wants nothing further from his life, as he says, I am always grateful for what the path of life gives to me. Today, Buddhism no longer exists in many of the countries where once it flourished. Nonetheless, in those countries where it is still practiced, it is a source of guidance and strength. And it continues to express people's aspirations for the well-being of all. Soon we all will die. Our hopes and fears will be irrelevant. On the luminous continuity of existence, which has no origin and which has never died, human beings project all the images of life and death, terror and joy, demons and gods. These images become our complete reality, and we submit without thinking to their dance. In all the movements of this dance, we project our greatest fears on death, and we make every effort to ignore it. Anything that has a shape will crumble away. Anything in a flock will disband. We are all like bees alone in this world, buzzing and searching with no place to rest. So we offer this prayer. Delusions are as various as the reflections of the moon on a rippling sea. Beings so easily become caught in a net of confused pain. May I develop compassion boundless as the sky, so that all may rest in the clear light of their own awareness. This is Tupton Sering. He is a 13-year-old novice monk. For the last 5 years, he has lived in a monastery in a small town in Ladakh, near the Tibetan border.
Vous savez, ce roi dans ce samba, c'est pas vrai.
This is Tupten's teacher, Lama Pema Shoden. Like Tupten, he was born into a poor farm family. He has spent all his life studying and practicing the Buddha's teachings. When the Chinese invaded Tibet, Pema Chodon fled from a monastery he had been visiting there and came back to Ladakh carrying 100 volumes of sutras and other texts on his back. These are what he is teaching Tupten and all the other young monks. Sutras are the records of the Buddha's words. Pema Chodon shows how they have guided people on the path of awakening for more than 2,000 years. He is careful that his students learn their true meaning and know how to apply them properly in daily life. Buddhism is always taught this way, directly from teacher to student, and Pema Chodon teaches just as he was taught. One day, while Tupten Tsering is preparing the morning meal, his teacher tells him, "A man in the next village is dying. We will leave here early tomorrow so that we can help him. We will be going there every day for the next 7 weeks. We will read the Bardo Tödol to him." Then he sends Tupten to the monastery library to find the Bardo Tödol. Known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this text is a guide for those who are dying and is used in all Buddhist countries of the Himalayas. It was written in the 8th century by Padmasambhava, who brought Buddhism to this region, and it has been an integral part of people's lives here ever since. The Bardo Tödol will be read aloud to the dead person for 49 days, which is the usual length of time between death and rebirth. This is the first time that Tupten has been asked to assist his teacher. What happens when we die? At death, we lose everything we thought was real. Unless we can let go of all the things we cherished in our life, we are terrified. If we cannot stop struggling to hold on to our old life, all our fear and yearning will drag us into yet another painful reality. But where does the consciousness actually go? We are always wandering through transitional states called bardos. The name of this text means the great liberation through hearing in the bardo, and it describes the transitions from death to life. As we read the text aloud to guide the dying man, what happens will become clear to you. The Sonams live at the edge of a nearby village. The family is very religious, and Grandfather Sonam is often at the temple. But it is his second son, Tsering Sonam, who is dying. He has been somehow stricken while traveling on business, in spite of the fact that he is only 42. It will will be hard for him to let go of his attachment to this world. To leave his wife and his old father must be very difficult, and this can cause him to wander in the painful uncertainty of the Bardo for all of the 49 days after his death.
작살 주면 괜히 어지래 남다 오게면
Thank you for coming to us. Are you well, old man? I'm all right. But my son... The Lama will do all he can for the dying man and also for his family, who themselves must be grief-stricken at the suddenness with which they face the loss of beloved son, husband, and kinsman. The bardo of dying lasts from the beginning of the body's physical collapse until the body and consciousness separate. While we are living, the elements of earth, water, fire, and air together support and condition our consciousness and our perceptions. Death occurs when this is no longer the case. Now, without the screens and filters of daily life, at this time, mind itself can be seen directly. We will now begin to read the Bardo Tödol. Don't cry, it doesn't help, it just confuses the dying man. The most important thing now is to help Tsering Sonam's mind be untroubled and clear. First, move him onto his right side. Then, as in this statue, he will be lying in the same way the Buddha did at his own death. In this position, it will be easier for his life force to become peaceful. According to the Book of the Dead, dying people are sensitive to sound both as they die and for certain periods after their death. Thus he will hear the teachings which can help him. Tsering Sonam, we are here to help you. Tsering Sonam, listen to me carefully. Listen, Tsering Sonam. Now is the time for you to pay close attention. Do not be afraid. You are dying, and the four great elements of your body are collapsing one into the other. It feels as if you are being crushed by mountains, tossed by waves, scorched and carried off by a strong wind. This is the bardo of dying. It is important now to recognize your own nature. Do not resist this. Do not be afraid. O son of noble family, the time of death has arrived. Now let your compassion be limitless as space. Let your mind be at peace. Rest in this, the vast, empty luminosity of mind itself. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes the collapse of the body's constituent elements. Earth collapses into water, water collapses into fire, fire collapses into air, and air dissolves into consciousness. Then there is an experience of piercing luminosity, pure white light, the clear radiance that arises from the direct experience of one's own basic nature. Now there is no darkness, no separation, no direction and no shape, only brilliant light. This boundless, sparkling radiance is mind, free from the shadows of birth and death, free from boundaries of any kind. Tsering Sonam, listen. Now all-pervasive light engulfs you completely. All of space has dissolved into pure light. This radiance is the mind of all the Buddhas, all the awakened ones. To recognize this is all that is necessary. Teacher, what happens to him if he doesn't recognize his own nature? Well, there were definite indications that he did not recognize it. So it is as if he has fallen into a dreamless sleep. Can he still hear? No, but in 3 days' time, his consciousness will hear more clearly than ever before. All his senses, all his emotions will be vivid and intense. And although it will seem to him that he has entered some new reality, it is still just the reality of his own mind. Because you didn't recognize your real nature, you have wandered here, and your own mind will now arise before you in unfamiliar ways. Now his body and consciousness have separated. Now the dead person does not know whether he is alive or not. Even so, he can see his family and hear them crying. Tsering Sonam, listen carefully. You are not alone in leaving this world. Everyone dies. Do not indulge any longer in desires and longings for this place. There is no way that you can stay here. Because the dead person was unable to recognize the luminosity of mind itself, his experiences now take shape out of random imagery from his former life. He sees his friends and relatives calling out to him, but they cannot hear his replies. Death has cut him off from them, and sorrow strikes his heart. He sees his family and relatives crying. He can see his bed, but he is no longer the one lying there. Instead, there is a corpse. Tsering Sonam, listen to me carefully. Soon you will experience the intense presence of your own emotional states as peaceful and raging light forms. Do not be afraid. They cannot hurt you. You are dead. Do not cling to the past. Go forward. Tsering Sonam, go forward. You are dead. Do not cling to the past. Pema Chodron teaches that though this world seems stable and solid, nothing here is permanent. But like water, snow, and ice, life is always shifting, changing form. Please tell us more about the Bardo. All existence is one kind of Bardo or another. It means living in an atmosphere of uncertainty, moving without a place to rest. So that means we are in a Bardo now? Yes, we are now passing through the Bardo of existence. Here, we want to make something lasting and secure, but no one has ever accomplished this. Our life is always in the hands of death. But death is a different kind of Bardo. Yes, when we die, it is completely out of our control. Our experience is completely naked. What is the best path through this Bardo? It is a question of waking up right now. Look at your own mind. Look at it when it is calm and still, and when it is running wild. This is what the Buddha did and what he taught. Tsering Sonam, listen carefully. You do not know who you are or where you have been. Now you will meet your mind in the form of projections which seem vivid and entirely real. Now you will see penetrating blue light shining all around you. This is the essence of consciousness itself, Buddha Vairochana. His wisdom is like a mirror, reflecting everything. He is the form of consciousness in its complete purity. This wisdom is inseparable from your own heart. But also, you will see a diffuse white light. Avoid it. If you follow the allure of the soft white light, you will find yourself ensnared in the temporary pleasures of being born as a god, living in lordly ignorance of the passage of time, yet subject to unexpected death. Tubten, here are the forms of the deities which Tsering Sonam will encounter now. They are the wisdom in his very heart and mind. The 42 peaceful deities will emanate from his heart, and then the 58 wrathful ones will emerge from his brain. They will appear one by one, and then all together. The peaceful deities are complete, immovable, invincible. If he cannot bear to enter their vast benevolent space, if he cannot let go of self-centeredness and fear, these deities will become terrifying, wrathful ones who drink the blood of his ego clinging and crush all his delusions. If he recognizes them as an expression of his own mind, they are the unsparing face of wakefulness. The wrathful forms emerging from the dying man's own brain appear before him actually and clearly as if they were real in their own right. Terror and anger he feels are his own efforts to evade being completely awake. He wanders uncertainly in the landscape of his own mind. If he recognizes this as his own projection, liberation is instantaneous. Alone in the night, the old Lama would sing to himself, "The light of wisdom, spontaneous play, dances in bright ripples on an empty lake." After his death, Tsering Sonam's body is cremated, in order that he may no longer cling to his former body, and so that his relatives and loved ones may release him from the bonds of their attachment to him. His body is offered to the fire. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Tsering Sonam's widow makes this prayer not just for herself and her husband, but for all beings to be released from suffering. It's been 8 days since Tsering Sonam died, but still he wanders in the Bardo. Now he is seeing the wrathful deities, so it is a difficult time for him. Please continue to think of him kindly. Continue to offer prayers for him and encourage him. It will help him find his way. Tsering Sonam, now pay attention. Do not be afraid or bewildered. The great wrathful ones are now appearing before you. They are the presence of your innate wisdom, the vivid form of your own wakefulness. Recognize them as a reflection of your own mind. Recognition and liberation are simultaneous. All of us feel sparks of anger, flickers of passion, twinges of jealousy, small moments. But from these seeds, we grow to become a jealous person, an angry woman, a passionate man. We say, "This is what I am," and we act accordingly. But these are just our masks. We forget that we are wearing them, and we run from the ones which others wear. So, really, these wrathful deities are just part of us? Yes. That's why I say it's impossible to run away from them. They are the sharpness of your own clarity. They are all in your head. But still, it's hard not to find them frightening. Maybe they can't understand why you're always running away. Then, all together and all at once, the peaceful and wrathful deities come before the dying man, filling the whole of space. If he does not recognize these as his own projections, then they transform into the terrifying image of the Lord of Death, with gnashing fangs and glassy eyes. This too is his own projection. But if he does not accept that, his fear and turmoil force him to wander on in terror to the Bardo of rebirth. When Tsering Sonam was alive, he was too busy to look closely at his life. Now 3 weeks have passed since his death. Drawn on by the stream of his old habits of mind, he still cannot recognize his own basic nature. Now he has left the bardo of the nature of mind. Again he is lost and wandering, so now he seeks to end his suffering by being born into a solid and familiar place. Now in the bardo of rebirth, all his senses have become extremely acute, and his consciousness is like a body without substance. In this body, the dead man, by a mere thought, can travel anywhere. As if he had miraculous powers, he can pass through mountains or circle the universe. He can enter anywhere, but nowhere can he rest. In the pain of his endless wandering, the thought of being born now promises great relief. Tsering Sonam, listen carefully. Though you can still see your family, they no longer know that you are with them. Though still you can go anywhere you wish, you cannot slow down. You are simply being driven on the winds of hope and fear, just as a dead leaf is carried on a gale. Still unable to recognize his own nature, his anger, lust, and confusion become ever more intense, ever more solid. They at last appear to him as entire realms where he may stop and dwell. O Tsering Sonam, now all your desperate thoughts pursue you as shadows, beasts, and armies of demons. You will move about, backwards and forward, towards anything that appears. The image of your former body is becoming faint, and the image of your future body is becoming clear. Any birth seems better than your current pain. Tsering Sonam, this will be your last chance. let your grasping mind dissolve completely. Whether you are born as a god or a human or an animal, whether you are a hungry ghost, a jealous god, or a hell being, you will again suffer the inescapable torments of living and dying. Since everyone is caught in these bardos of suffering and delusion, what can we do? People make hell realms out of their own anger. They make worlds out of passion, out of envy or complacency. We project our emotional states and then believe it is the real world. But no matter what, everyone longs for compassion. Everyone wishes to be awake. So the best thing is to develop genuine compassion for all beings and for ourselves too. And our compassion should extend beyond our friends and family and the people we like. It must extend to all people and to all living beings. Somehow it seems if we don't truly care for others, we can never know our own minds. Remember, Tupton, you can have lofty insights and pure impulses, but then return to your old habits without even noticing. We have to work all the time to open our hearts and look for the truth. Otherwise, there is neither understanding nor a purpose for understanding. Also, Tupton, it's not a bad idea as life goes by to keep your sense of humor. Sering Sonam is coming to the end of this journey. As he reaches the end of the bardo of rebirth, the features of the world he is going to enter will become very clear to him. If he pays attention now, he can find his way to a favorable rebirth. Tsering Sonam, listen carefully. You are now on the path to rebirth. Choose carefully where you are to be born. In all the possibilities that are present for you, choose a good human birth in a good place so that you can continue on the path to recognize your own mind. Even though you are desperate for a home, a dark cave in a forest may well lead to a birth in the animal realm. Even if you are consumed by yearning, the realm of hungry ghosts is a never-ending wilderness where life is ruled by hunger and thirst. Rage, bitterness, and anger open all the images of hell. The gods may command all the pleasures of the senses, but their death comes as suddenly as an unpleasant smell borne on a summer breeze. Put your mind at ease. Avoid the extremes of pleasure and pain, and take birth where you may still recognize the luminous essence of your own mind. Will Tsering Sonam remember much of his journey when he is born again? No. He may be more sensitive in some ways, but he will still be starting out new. So it seems that coming to life is not necessarily a thing to be celebrated. Just as death is not always something to be mourned, being born is not necessarily a joy in itself. Then what is the meaning in our journey through life and death? Seeking the truth and practicing compassion, that is the way life becomes meaningful. Just as it does for this young bride. The beginning of a new life always holds that promise. When you are born, you cry, but the whole world is overjoyed. When you die, the world cries, but you may find the great liberation.